Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to be talking about the gene keys today. So briefly, I'm going to introduce you the book, The Gene Keys. It is authored by Richard Rudd, who is the founder of Gene Keys. And this work has totally changed my life in so many ways. It is both a personal journey that you can take through the Gene Keys, and it is also a universal wisdom teaching that we can just study and begin to, just be transformed both through our personal process and also through observing the collective and understanding humanity and understanding what it means to be human. So I wanted to introduce you to the Gene Keys as the last live session here. And I know that there are so many systems in the world and that we might be kind of already tired of all these different kinds of systems. The Gene Keys is different. It is not like your typical astrology or even human design or Enneagram or whatever kind of reading or profile that you can receive. The Gene Keys is also based on your birth time or calculated based on your birth time. So you can find a profile of your Gene Keys. You can do that at genekeys.com/free-profile. If you go to genekeys.com, you'll see where you can click and run your free profile, completely free. And by the way, me sharing about this, I don't receive anything. I'm not, at least yet, affiliated with the Gene Keys. I am in their guides training, in their guides program, but I haven't completed the whole thing yet. So that's why I haven't gotten into the affiliate program situation. So I am only sharing about this because it has been so profound for me. I love the teaching and I love the Gene Keys, and I keep finding them over and over and over again, like the wisdom in them. So that's why we're here and I am sharing about it. In order to understand something about this lecture, you actually don't have to know anything about the Gene Keys. You don't even have to know your profile. So even though there is a profile that you can run, you don't have to know your profile right now in order to understand what is being spoken of here today. Most likely, though, you will be inspired to find out more. So in that case, come up or figure out your birth time and go and do your Gene Keys free profile. Okay, are we ready? It's actually interesting because I haven't been really actively studying, like reading the Gene Keys. I read a couple different keys this week, last week, but I haven't been actively studying the Gene Keys so much lately. It's more like a background contemplation that is going on. And I am very curious to see what I have to share about the Gene Keys, not from a place where I've been just reading, and kind of coming here to regurgitate whatever I just read. That's not the case right now. The case is that I actually haven't been consuming a lot of Gene Keys material. So whatever I'm sharing right now is going to arise kind of spontaneously and organically, and in a way or from a place of my current understanding of the Gene Keys. One of the most amazing things that I love about the Gene Keys is that it's a living wisdom. It is the kind of wisdom that keeps feeding us as our consciousness expands. So it's a universal wisdom teaching. It has 64 different keys that have kind of like an archetypal, they are 64 different archetypes of humanity or human experience, human expression. And what makes it a living wisdom is that each time that we contemplate and understand, or contemplate and read about the archetypes, we will understand something different, because our consciousness and our lived life experience will always begin to interact with the text or with the teaching. And it is said that this transmission, the gene keys, speaks to our DNA. So whenever you read or hear about the gene keys, something will activate, almost like a remembrance will activate within you. And therefore, some kind of process begins and it activates the DNA. And then when you come to the text again, you will understand something different because you have gone through a process within yourself. So that's all kind of like a little preview, or I don't know, an introduction to what I find the most fascinating about the gene keys. But to give you like a very practical introduction to the gene keys, it is founded by Richard Rudd, like I already said. He studied human design for a long time with the founder of human design system, Ra Uru Hu. And originally how I found the gene keys was through human design. So I found human design first, and then about 6 months later, someone told me about the gene keys. They were like, well, if you like human design, have you heard about the gene keys? And I was like, wait, no, I want to hear more. And pretty soon after, I ordered this book, which contains the 64 gene keys. And I obviously had done my profile, and I was like, wow, the text and the level of wisdom and the level of consciousness in this book, in the transmission that Richard Rudd has received, is just next level. As a lover of wisdom and as a lover of language, this really speaks to me because it's written using the most sophisticated language, and that's why it's sometimes hard to read, even for native English speakers. And I'm not a native speaker, so I'm used to kind of not always understanding everything that is written in English. But as a native English speaker, you might also encounter that, wait a minute, I don't fully understand what this text is about. And that's okay, because I mean, sometimes, yes, it can be a language barrier. If we translate that word, or if we look at the meaning of the word, we might understand it a little bit better. We might get clarity. And then sometimes there are words, and these words in the gene keys are chosen very carefully. And these words contain a meaning that only begins to open up to us in our lives, and as we start understanding the phenomenon or the energy behind the word, when it kind of comes alive in our everyday lives, where we start seeing that energy or that archetype actually expressing, and then we recognize, that's what it means. So instead of understanding it from an intellectual place, we can also begin to understand things from this more experiential and more like a feminine place, not only intellectually absorbing it, but also living that. So the gene keys is based on the I Ching, the same thing as human design. I Ching is one of the aspects of human design. For the gene keys, it's the main thing, astrology and I Ching. So the heavens are divided into 64 hexagrams that do not go in the order from 1 to 64, even though in this book, oh, I'm hitting myself. Even though in this book, it goes from 1 to 64. But in the original I Ching, if you look at the wheel, that is not the order of things. They go in random order. And the Chinese I Ching, that is like an ancient oracle, ancient book. It's called the Book of Changes. It has been used as a book to gain wisdom about life, and then also as an oracle. So sometimes people wanted to understand a certain energy, and they would look up what comes up in the I Ching, and then they would, interpret that however it was interpreted. But each of the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, they have a certain kind of name, and they contain a teaching. And the gene keys is like an expanded version of that teaching. And it also is related to our biology. So some of us might know that our human DNA has 64 codons. We also have 64 keys in a piano, if I'm not completely mistaken. So 64 is this number pattern that repeats in many different places. So each of these 64 gene keys is said to relate to a codon in our DNA. And that's why it's said that it speaks to our DNA, because it can awaken some of those codons actually in our physiological DNA, and therefore help us to make changes on a cellular level. Because in this way of thinking, our biology, our mind, our consciousness, they are not separated, but they are all intertwined. So from this point of view, we can affect our physiological genes with our consciousness, with the vibration, the frequency that we vibrate on. And therefore, each of the 64 gene keys has a spectrum of consciousness. So within that key, there is an energy of the key. And then that energy of the key, it can vibrate at a low frequency. And that is when we see the shadow expression of that key. It can vibrate on a higher frequency, and that is when we see the gift expression of that same energy. And finally, it can vibrate on a very, very, very high, almost like divine frequency. And that's when we see the siddhi, the divine gift expression of that same exact energy. So we all contain all of these 64 gene keys. You can recognize all of these themes from your human life. Here is the full list of all the keys. So there are words like shadows like chaos, division, conflict, mediocrity, compromise, dullness, indifference, opinion, judgment, codependence. Very familiar themes. We can all recognize, okay, yes, I do remember a time when I compromised. I do know an opinion, opinionated, feeling, whatever it is. So these are universal, but then in your free profile, you'll notice that you have certain keys that are there in your profile. And those are the kinds of themes that are really highlighted for you during this lifetime. So those words might resonate even more than some of these other words. So those were the shadows, the low expression of those energies. But then we have gift, the higher expression of this energy. And there are words like understanding, patience, diplomacy, determination, naturalness, magnetism, farsightedness, integrity, sensitivity. So already these words, they are like, okay, beautiful. These sound like things that I would like to have, or I would like to, embody. And then there are siddhis, so these highest possible frequencies, expressions of these same energies, such as beauty, unity, innocence, forgiveness, timelessness, peace, virtue, exquisiteness, invincibility. So these are already like, wow, what's happening? It's almost like a fairy tale type of vocabulary. And the idea of the gene keys is that we have an opportunity in this human life to go from that shadow into the gift expression of these energies or archetypes, and even taste or embody or feel or visit this frequency of the Siddhi. So essentially the shadow is our trauma. It might not be the most dramatic trauma. We sometimes talk about the capital T trauma, so the sudden loss, death, violence, these kinds of very dramatic and traumatic situations. But then also there are the smaller T traumas, the developmental traumas that we have in our lifetime. And the shadow of the gene key, it kind of describes the adaptation or the kind of energy that you have taken as a result of either a capital T trauma or a small letter trauma that you have. And that is where we all start. That is where we usually find ourselves as we as we grow up in our families and come into the world and come into the gene keys. And we also usually have already unlocked some of the gifts of that same energy. And then there is the possibility for even the Siddhi, the divine expression of that gift. So what it means is that when we find our gene keys, when we see our profile and we recognize some of these words, we can begin to understand how these energies, how these shadows perhaps play out in our lives. They can be expressed in either reactive ways where they are expressed outwardly, or they can be repressed where this energy turns inward and we somehow repress it instead of expressing it. When we become aware of these shadows, we can begin to heal whatever wounding was associated with that. And then we begin to unlock the gift. And as we do this process that we do through loving ourselves, through awareness, through compassion, through gentleness, through patience, maybe we do it through yoga, meditation, somatic work, all these things that we do inside this community as well, we begin to elevate our frequency. Our frequency naturally begins to rise when we no longer identify with the victim of the shadow pattern. And we begin to feel more empowered and more liberated. And that's when the gift begins to shine through. And then we can express that gift more than we express the shadow, perhaps. And a lot of this comes out in relation to our purpose here, what we do in life, also to our relationships, especially the close ones, the intimate ones, the romantic ones. And then also many times it comes out in relation to money. To give you an example, let's pick one gene key. So there are 64 altogether, and we each, in our profile, there are 11 spheres in the profile. So there are 11 different, there might be 11 different keys. Sometimes you have the same key, the same number in different spheres. So then you have a double, you could even have a triple, and then there is more emphasis to that key in your life. But you might have 11 different keys in your profile. Let's take the gene key 29, one of my favorites. I don't have this directly in my profile, but again, it's a universal teaching. So it's something that we all can tap into, that we can all learn from. So so even if you don't have this, I don't have this, you can still learn a lot from it. The gene key 29 is called Shadow of Half-Heartedness, the Gift of Commitment, and Siddhi of Devotion. So it has to do with our relationship, with our commitment to something. And at the shadow frequency, we can be half-hearted about this commitment or this relationship. We might either express the half-heartedness as not committing to that something, or we might commit to that something more than we commit to ourselves, and then we are being half-hearted, uncommitted to ourselves. So maybe we cling to that job or to that person, but we're actually being half-hearted to ourselves. Or we are half-hearted to the other person or to that job, or we're only kind of, yeah, I love the word half-hearted, only half of our hearts is there. Or only one foot in, one foot out, like we're always shying away from the commitment. We're not fully there. And the shadow of half-heartedness is also about not knowing when to stop. So sometimes, a thing runs its course, like the cycle is over, but we still continue. And that could also be, that is a shadow expression of the half-heartedness, that we stay somewhere for too long. And the idea, the gift of commitment is to go in with our full hearts, be fully committed both to ourselves and to the outer thing, external thing, whatever that may be, and also listen carefully and be in tune with the cycles of life and the natural kind of expiration date of things, so that when something comes to a natural end, we also know how to step out of the commitment. So we are fully committed until one day we feel like, or we begin to know that this commitment is done, this has run its course, and then we have been there with our full hearts, and then we step out of it with our full hearts. So that is the gift of it. And the siddhi is devotion. So of course, this is a very spiritual word. We can be devoted to our teacher or to, the God, essentially. And then everything becomes a devoted act. We become a devotee. If we are on the shadow frequency, we might be devoted to, for example, a partner, but when it comes from a place of self-sacrifice, it is not healthy devotion. It is a devotion that still needs to learn certain things. And therefore, the frequency it's a shadow frequency, it's a lower frequency. And then we learn whatever lesson is there for us. Maybe we learn to be committed to ourselves. And once we have mastered being committed to ourselves, we might come to this very high frequency place where we, in a way, sacrifice everything. We become fully devoted to that higher power. And it's no longer from a place of self-neglect, but now it is from a place of kind of really being on a high frequency, being a disciple for some master, or like a really high frequency expression of this, and really devoting oneself to that higher power or higher good. So you see how interestingly the seed, the energy of that thing is already there on the shadow frequency, still there in the gift frequency, and there in its fullest kind of flourishing on the siddhic frequency. And it's the same energy, but just from a low vibrational or high vibrational place. And the siddhi is there to remind us of our divine essence, that we are here to realize our human potential. And most of us, we start from the shadow frequency because we are still in these bodies that are heavily traumatized, if not from our own lives, then from the generations past. We haven't fully dealt with all the collective trauma that is there. And we keep re-traumatizing ourselves because we are still, acting from that traumatized, wounded place. We still have the victim consciousness, the victim patterns, the way of relating to life as life is happening to us instead of for us. And there is nothing wrong with that. It's okay to be where we're at. But the Gene Keys is a teaching that helps us. It almost like it is said to be the algorithm of awakening. So it shows you your algorithm, your path to awakening, to realizing that you are not a victim, but that you are actually divine energy in human form. And yeah, so that is the path. And this is the reminder that we all, like, the human potential is way vaster, way more expansive than we ever thought. And the kinds of people like Buddha or Jesus were people who actually realized their fullest Siddhic potential. The Siddhi explains the way in which we get enlightened. So there is no one enlightenment. There are 64 different expressions of enlightenment, and you can read them, all the 11 different ones, or maybe you have 10 or 9 different ones. But they are all there, and then you can read this beautiful divine version of yourself and marvel at that, like, wow, my enlightenment will follow or will flower through these kinds of expressions. How fun and how fascinating and how cool is that? And then on the flip side, when we look at the Siddhis and we're like, oh gosh, like, I'm so far from that. Sometimes what I hear from people who study the Gene Keys is like, oh no, like, I start feeling bad to know that this is my potential and I'm nowhere near this potential. And I definitely understand that sentiment and I can empathize, and I'm like, yeah, I know it's a long journey. It's a long journey to get there. And then at the same time, it's all in its divine timing, and the potential is there, and there can be moments where we do reach the Siddhic state of consciousness, and it's really not even the goal. I think also, more importantly, we're paving the way for the future generations. Maybe during our generation, we don't see a lot of the Siddhis yet, but by us in this moment doing the work, we pave the way for the next and the following and the following and the following generations, so that they would have the chance to be starting maybe not from as deep and dark, shadowy place as we have to start, but they could start from a slightly lighter place. And because I believe in reincarnation, the Gene Keys is kind of based on the idea of us circulating here. It's not a very big portion of us that goes on, but it's this tiny speck of consciousness that keeps going and keeps choosing the next and the next and the next circumstances where to incarnate, so that our mission and our full learning lessons are completed. But I don't believe that we are meant to accomplish everything during one lifetime. We can continue from where we left off in our previous lifetime, and maybe the Gene Keys that you chose for this lifetime, they have to do with some of those core lessons that you were already perhaps starting to learn in your previous lifetime, or the ones that you haven't learned yet, or or maybe you came to complete the lesson and you actually do find yourself in the gift and the Siddhi frequency. But it's not done over one lifetime. We do as much as we can of this shadow work, and then we keep going and the next generations keep going. And it's like a journey of humanity, not so much the journey of an individual, but more like a journey of humanity that we are doing here and that the Gene Keys talk about. And when we do this work of elevating our consciousness, because everything in us is one, everything is conscious, this human vehicle is, has the potential to become conscious, even though about, what do they say, 95% of our DNA is junk DNA, or is it 97%? It's non-coding DNA. It's DNA that doesn't seem to be doing anything. But the Gene Keys transmission suggests that 97% of junk DNA is actually our human potential that we have yet to awaken. So this 97% of the junk DNA is our hidden potential, dormant potential. And by doing this work of elevating our frequency, our consciousness, our ability to understand what's going on, we awaken, we employ some of that DNA. And as many of you know, there is a study, or there's a field of study called epigenetics, which means that the environment, the external environment, the town and the place that we live in, but also the inner environment, how happy we are, how content we are in life, that affects the genes more than our actual genetic inheritance. So there is really no such thing as genetically inherited illness, for example. We might have the gene, but the fact that the gene can either turn on or turn off based on our level of happiness and contentment in life means that it's not a predestined thing. We might carry all kinds of genes for all kinds of things, but they might never turn on, and we might be turning on some other genes that are actually activating these positive, these beautiful, incredible gifts that we carry in our DNA, as much as we carry the gene for breast cancer or something like this. So with this kind of work of raising our consciousness, we upregulate the good genes and we downregulate the in a way negative genes, because we create such a healthy, such a vibrant environment internally. And it doesn't mean that we are just positive thinking our lives and spiritually bypassing our lives into a more healthy place. That's actually the opposite of it, because if we deny this deep, dark, shadowy part of ourselves, it stays there. So with the Gene Keys work, what we do is we become aware of the shadow patterns. We begin to contemplate those shadow patterns, observe them in our lives, see how they manifest, see how they undermine our potential. And then when we become aware of those things in our lives, in our bodies, we pause there and we breathe into it. And we do this work of loving that part of us. And that's where the alchemy happens. The alchemy of transmuting that pain and that shadowy darkness into something else. And that's where the gift begins to emerge. So we're not trying to bypass or suppress or repress any of the uncomfortable stuff in our lives, but we take it and we really hold space for it, and we source the beauty and the positivity from that nasty package itself. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're not trying to run away from it. We're not even trying to fix it, because we just allow it to be and we love it into transformation. And many times this work how it feels for me is that I have a pattern that I'm aware of, and I just observe it, and I keep, holding space for it. And when I've worked with it, and it's not necessarily an active working on something, it kind of stays on the background of my consciousness as I live my life. And then comes a day or a moment where it feels like that work has come to a completion, and that's where the transmutation happens, where that pattern just, that shadow, it has held on, and then just one day it releases its grip, and it's like, okay, now it's done. And what comes out of that is usually like somatically, physiologically, like, oh, there is some sort of release in the physical body as well, because the tension that we held in form of that shadow in our consciousness, it releases and lets go. And when that lets go, then something arises from there. And that gives us perspective in life. That gives us wisdom in life. That gives us, I don't know, it's almost like more consciousness comes online, because no longer is all of our energy going towards that shadow. The shadows, they always take up way more energy, because we're trying to, it's a reaction, or it's a pattern of fear. And fear, it stifles a lot of energy. And when that fear pattern releases, there is so much freedom in the system. And many times it's like, oh my God, wow, I feel so liberated for a moment. And then we become aware of something else. And it's not about being on this endless journey of self-improvement, but it is more about just, this light of consciousness, the love of God wants to shine into us and make all that dark, or that unconscious, offline part of us to come online and to become conscious and aware. So that is the process. It's not about chasing this endless self-improvement. It's just a natural process of being human, that more and more is being illuminated as our consciousness expands. And like I've mentioned a couple of times, the primary way of working with the gene keys is contemplation. So you pick one of the keys that you have in your profile and you begin to contemplate it. So you might read the 3 words, you might read the description on the book, you might start working with the gene keys online. They have beautiful online courses that are inexpensive. And you begin to contemplate the gene keys. So you continue living your life, and you begin to observe how that shadow, how that gift, and even that city are present in your life. And, then you just work with that. You might take it as your contemplation in your meditation or your morning ritual, or you pause throughout your day and you just sit and you observe life, or you stand, or you drive your car. You don't even have to physically pause in order to pause. You can pause right now, and you can just become aware of what's going on in your body, in your environment. And you're just pausing while you, in a way, continue what you're doing. So you're here with me, but you're still pausing, you're fully present. And these are the little pockets of time where this gene keys work really works, where it happens in the pausing. And there is no one way or right way, or no one can know the path for you. So the gene keys is a very feminine transmission because of that. There is really no direct path. We can look at the profile, we can look at the paths that are there, but what will arise, we can't know. No one can know how it looks for you. So it is a path that we get to walk with ourselves. And I love this idea of accompanying myself on this journey. it can be very deep. There are so many layers to each of the gene keys. So even if you've contemplated all of them, maybe over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, when you start over or when you come back to a key again, like I said in the beginning, they are living wisdom. So now as your perception has expanded, what you're reading, what you're able to take in this moment is so different from a year ago or 2 years ago. And 5 years ago or 5 years from this moment, you will get so much more again. So that's why, I mean, it's a literally a gift that keeps on giving, because it keeps, even if you've read the words or the pages so many times before, each time when you have done your own contemplation, you'll notice that you understand deeper. You're like, wait a minute, wow, it's been saying this all this time. And that's what is the most rewarding thing to me about the gene keys and overall this path of self-awareness and consciousness, that it actually works. My perception and my consciousness keeps expanding and deepening and reaching in all directions. And when I look at something that I've seen, this is a rock that I received from my friend, it can be the same thing, but we see different things about it because our lenses and our consciousness has changed. And that is the whole kind of, I don't know, like a summary of what happens in our lives, where we create internal changes and that changes what we see externally. So the gene keys can help us so much in changing our internal, consciousness, our internal chemistry even, and then we can start perceiving the outer in a completely different way without having to change the outer in any way. I hope you're as excited about the gene keys as I am. I would love to know how you're receiving this information. I've been talking pretty much straight for about 45 minutes. And yeah, I would love to know how it's all landing. And I would also love to share a little bit of my gene keys. So, okay, I am sharing. So I am going to show you the Gene Keys profile. So unfortunately, I'm on my phone, so I don't think the full version of this profile will be visible, but I'm going to do my best. So this is the full profile. Like I said, it has 11 spheres. I am not going to go through all the spheres today, but I am going to go through the 3 sequences. So within these 11 spheres, you can see different colors. And we have the green spheres on the top, on the right side, on the left side, and on the bottom. And the green sequence is called the activation sequence. So this is where you start. Usually, I mean, in a way, you can start from any sphere that you want. But if you want to go from the top and begin to go layer by layer, peeling the onion, the top one here is the outermost layer of your onion. So the green one is the activation sequence, and it gives you your core stability in this life, your purpose in this life, and not only what you're here to do. It doesn't give you like, you can only do this one kind of thing, your purpose is to be a teacher, or your purpose is to be a blah, blah, blah. But it gives you the purpose of your existence, why you came here, what is the energy and the essence that you bring. And it might influence what you do in this lifetime, or it might be, just the energy that you embody in everything that you do, no matter what you do, everything that you do. So starting from the activation sequence, it gives you an understanding of why you're here and this core stability of kind of self-love, and knowing that this is why I'm here. This is my purpose. This is who I am in a way. And then the red spheres have to do with love. So this is called the Venus sequence. And the Venus sequence is something where the gene keys, and don't ask me how it's even possible, because I think it's a part of the mystery. But the Venus sequence describes the way in which we were wounded in our childhood and early adulthood. And we do this work. This wounding is expressed in our relationships, our family relationships, in our partnerships, in any relationship. These shadows will play out because they are a blueprint or an imprint of our wounding. And we can, as we know, the wounding that happens in relationships needs to also be healed in relationships. So this Venus sequence shows us the map of our wounding, but it also shows us the potential for healing as we become aware of our shadows. So it's all about going back to the innocence, not the naivete, but the innocence of our spirit, of ourselves, and learning to receive love again, both from ourselves and from others. And as we learn to receive love, we arrive at the blue sequence, which is called the pearl sequence. And this has to do with prosperity. It's not only about financial prosperity. It's about finding out our vocation, our purpose, what we're here to do, where we kind of have figured out our most acute. Okay, I don't know what happened. I'm sharing screen. I'm supposed to share the screen. I hope you can see the screen. Now I'm starting to feel a little worried. Okay. So in the vocation, in the blue, if you can't see my screen, just follow on your own screen. So go look up your Gene Keys profile. So when we arrive at the blue sequence, when we have figured out our wounding in this life, and when we have done the inner work of transforming our wounding into our purpose, into wisdom, and then we make that in a way our calling, or it is the calling always been, we make that our vocation in this life. We take the initiative to make it happen. We find the community that we thrive in, and we have this kind of personal brand of our particular work and our essence. And then we arrive at a place where there is this prosperity that is not only prosperity in the sense of money, like how much money we have, but it's all kinds of prosperity where we feel rich in every area of our lives. And feeling rich is not the same for everyone. So your prosperity might look like, a simple home with a simple garden, perhaps with relationships, with doing your work in this world, and you feel so rich and so happy in that. And for someone else, feeling rich in life might mean the more traditional way of, being rich, having 3 cars and maybe 3 different homes and, lots of kind of external expression of the richness, but also feeling content and fulfilled internally. So that is a required thing. There is no true prosperity without this inner fulfillment. If we're only externally rich, we are nowhere near prospering in life. We are just, there is just one aspect of that full prosperity present. And at the same time, if we don't have the financial means to make ends meet, we're also not fully prospering. So it has to be all of it. And that is where we kind of come to the heart or the core of the gene keys. But because life is cyclical, because our consciousness keeps evolving, when we arrive, we've peeled one layer off, we start all over again. So we can go this sequence over as many times in our lives as we have the time for, and we can always discover something new, something different, because let me stop sharing, because there is endless okay, this screen sharing is not my strength. So yeah, so we can do this so many times, or so many rounds, so many layers of that onion are present, because our potential is so vast. And until we have kind of realized the Siddhic potential of ecstasy, transfiguration, wisdom, rebirth, harmony, awakening, stillness, super abundance, we have work to do, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be our goal. Unless I am super abundant, I will not be. So much potential. The life keeps always teaching us more, and we can always continue to be the humble student of life and be receiving these beautiful, beautiful lessons from life. Okay. I think this is what I want to share. I don't want to share more than this because I don't want to overwhelm anyone. I don't think there is value in trying to understand everything all at once. I would say if you're inspired by the gene keys, even just the kind of opening to be inspired by it begins the journey already. Listening to this conversation or monologue has already activated things in your body. And you can even pause now and you can listen to your body. And you can see what's present. Numbness is also something to be aware of. Tingling is something to be aware of. Emotions, sensations are to be aware of. Anything is valuable. No feeling is a feeling also. So just recognizing what's present for you right now. Noticing if something has awakened or there is something activated in your body, almost like your DNA has now been listening and has been hearing something. And then if you feel called to continue with the gene keys, I would recommend maybe even printing out, or if you like drawing, you can draw the profile on an actual piece of paper, maybe hang it up somewhere where you can see it. If you like to work with the words, you can write down the words. If you speak some other language than English, you can see if there are translations of the gene keys. I think there is a translation into German, into maybe French, some of these big languages. In Finnish, I have translated the 64 gene keys. I haven't translated the entire book. If you want the translation of the 64 gene key words in Finnish, I can distribute it for free, or I can actually add it under here into the downloads section. And otherwise, if you speak English, if you are comfortable with English, well, if you're listening to this, you are, I would highly recommend. It's a thick book, but it's amazing. It will serve you for a lifetime. So I would recommend getting a hard copy of that, but it's also available as an audio book and Kindle book, I'm sure, and all these things. And also, if you want to start your Gene Keys journey officially on their website, you can start with an activation sequence. I think it's $150 or something, and you get a lot of material customized to your Gene Keys, and then an explanation of what each of the spheres means, and Richard Rudd's about 20-minute contemplation on all of these, like an audio contemplation. So you'll begin to understand your keys better. And we don't really do readings of the Gene Keys. There can be a one-on-one Gene Keys session if you want to sit down and kind of understand your Gene Keys better. I offer that as well, and you can contact me for that. And there are other Gene Keys readers around the world. But the point is really not to interpret any of this stuff for you. I mean, we can have a conversation about it. We can, begin to unpeel some of those layers, but it's mostly a personal journey. It's your own contemplation, and only you know what you carry in your DNA, in your consciousness, and what are the themes that you are meant to unlock, and where your higher potential is hidden within your own consciousness. So welcome to this journey if you feel called. It's a very fun and rewarding journey, and at times it can be very emotional as well and deep, because we are, releasing some of that heavy load that we carry. But I think that's why we're here as human beings. This is why we're here. We're here to do this work. Not that it's the only work that we do, or we have to be so serious about it. Actually, seriousness is one of the shadows, the 46th Gene Key. We're not meant to do it in a serious way. We're actually, enlightenment means to lighten up. We become lighter, our existence becomes lighter. So that's the work that we do here. So maybe we do it through fun and through play and through creativity and through love and through, raising our children and loving our partners and doing our work in the world. But we keep doing it, like we keep showing up, kind of like the half-heartedness commitment key. We are committed to the work, and we go all in with all of our love and our commitment and devotion as best as we can. Okay, and a lot of this processing, since a lot of our DNA lives in our bellies, in our gut, I am going to finish off by bringing our awareness to the belly. So if you want to, you can close your eyes if you're in a place where you can. You can even place your hands on your belly and begin to relax your belly. First and foremost, relax the belly. And just sense the softness and the warmth of your belly. You can let your breath drop all the way down into the belly. And really breathing there and just pausing, slowing down, letting your awareness drop down into the belly. And just for a few moments, sit here. Awareness resting in your belly, the cauldron of our experiences, our emotions. Notice if there is a lot to process, or if it feels relatively calm. Just noticing whatever you notice in the belly. And find that deepest center in your belly, the deepest center, your Dantian, the power center. And just for a moment, rest your awareness in your deepest belly. And keeping some of that power there while also maintaining this sense of relaxation and softness. And you can stay here as long as you need a little meditation, your body meditation. And whenever you're ready, you can slowly begin to come back. And I'm going to leave you digesting all of this in your body. You don't even have to think about it so much, unless you want to, of course. And just allow this process to happen on its own timing. And if you feel called to contact me or leave a question or a comment below, I would be very happy and honored to receive it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.